Now the bike behind me is my 2021 BMW M1000RR that I was lucky enough to win a few Superstock races on. Originally I'd planned for a World Superbike mechanic to help me take this bike to bits and rebuild it, but he's not turned up, so I thought it'd be far more entertaining to watch me take it to bits when I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I've also been lucky enough to have a couple of people send me some free things to stick on this bike, but more of that later in the video. Now there's a reason I don't work on motorbikes, and that is because I'm not very good at it, and I'll happily admit that. But I'm hoping that by me learning on this YouTube video, you guys can learn at home too. So firstly, I'm going to unbox all my cleaning products that I've got for this video. Ceramic protection. This is something I'm looking forward to putting on the bike later in the video, and that's a ceramic protection kit. I've heard a lot about these. Now Muc-Off have kindly sent me this stuff for free, but having said that, I will say this has got UV protection, which at first I laughed at. Why would I need UV protection? My bike's not going to get sunburned. Then I realised this bike is already actually changing colour. The fluorescent orange paint on this bike has started fading, so I think that is actually very important. It's hydrophobic, gloss matte, safe, durable, and grime repellent. So it should keep my brother away from the bike. Speed polish. This is going to be the shiniest bike on planet Earth. Dry chain lube, gloves, and a spray bottle. Bosh. Now the reason I want to strip this bike is I want to make it absolutely immaculate to go in a showroom, and there's a couple of little things that are missing off this bike to make it my own. It's currently got the wrong number board on the front, and the tank cover also isn't the original tank cover. So I'm going to take it completely to bits and then rebuild it so it's going to look exactly as I finished the last race of the season on. Now the tricky part for me is I've seen this bike get stripped so many times I couldn't tell you, but I've never actually paid attention to what was going on. So now I'm going to have to figure it out all for myself. If anyone's ever seen any of my bike build videos on this channel, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just a novice like you guys. I was a professional motorcycle racer at one point, but I stuck to riding the bikes, not fixing them. And there was a reason for that. So I'm hoping it'll be entertaining for you guys to watch me at home, taking this to bits, cleaning it and rebuilding it. As a complete novice, I don't know what I'm doing, so please correct me in the comments if I'm doing anything wrong. So I'm gonna run a little bit of a time lapse on this. The first job I'm gonna do is take off all the bodywork. Now, if anyone has a BMW M1000 of their own, they'll know a lot of these bolts are Torx heads, but these ones in the race bodywork, so that was a 4mm. These ones in the race bodywork are all 4mm because the mechanics changed them to make them easier to work on. Now, bolts are already flying all over the place, so I'm going to create some kind of storage system for these. There's little things about this bike I forgot, like the addition of the Batham's bottle that we put on the belly pan, so when the bike was leaning over in the corners you could see the Batham's beer bottle. Also, I've just noticed when you look at that, you can see how much the belly pan's been grounding out at corners. That happened at corners like Cadwell Park at the bottom of the mountain, or various tracks in the UK. I'd never realised how close it got. You can also see, if you look up closely here, the damage from the exhaust on the inside, how hot that gets. There's heat shield on this side, perhaps we should have put some on that side too. I'm quickly getting to the point where I don't know what I'm doing. So, next is the top fairing. So the fairings are off. I don't actually know how far I'm going to go with this. I'm just going to keep removing things until I get to a point that I think I probably shouldn't remove that. So next thing I can take off is the tank cover, seat unit, and then we'll go from there. Now, I think the tank cover comes off second. And we're on to different size bolts. Now, although I have no idea what I'm doing as a mechanic really, I've dismantled a couple of bikes in my time, but I've always had professionals help me put them back together. I have got the benefit of this already being built as a race bike, and the beauty of race bikes is they're built for practicality and simplicity when it comes to putting them back together. For anyone that's never worked on a race bike or seen a race bike, the difference between that and a road bike is actually quite a lot. Although this looks like a standard road bike, the first thing I've noticed taking it to bits is they're all 4mm Allen key bolts. So when mechanics are building these bikes in the winter, they swap all the bolts to be as similar as they can. So for one mechanic to remove the fairing, he just needs a 4mm Allen key. If you're to buy a normal road bike, you'll notice that they all have different sized bolts here, there and everywhere, and they're a pain to work on. So I have got that added benefit so far, and I am honestly really enjoying this process so far. It's immaculate as it is, but there are little bits of dirt. I did one track day on this bike after it was finally prepped. So it's basically got one track day's worth of grime and grease on it that I want to get rid of and make this as immaculate as I can before it goes back together one last time. This is the rain light in here that I'm going to disconnect. And this is where I'll start breaking things because there's fiddly little connectors that I don't know how they go back together. Looks like. You know it's getting serious because the jumpers come off and the gloves. You ever heard the phrase, all the gear, no idea? You are witnessing that right now. Right, that should disconnect. That's there. Seat unit. Voila. Something else that would differ from your standard road bike is this rain light here. Now we have to run these in race meetings now, so you switch this on when it's raining so the guy behind you has a better idea. Obviously when you're racing there's no brake lights, so there's no way of really seeing the bike in front in low visibility conditions. So that's what I've just disconnected now. Now the final piece before I start getting way out of my comfort zone is the tank cover, which has got another Allen key bolt here, which is a 4mm. And voila, I've removed the clothes of this bike. Now, dismantling a bike is very easy and I can continue to undo bolts and keep removing things. I guess the next thing I'm going to remove is the tank, which is where things can start getting messy for me and going wrong. Now I'm going to do this series and I want to leave it up to you guys because there's two things I can do here. This bike is as it finished the last race meeting in 2021. The race before that was my best ever race in my career where I started last on the grid and won the race from the back of the grid. So there's a lot of nostalgia and a lot of happy memories for me with this bike. It was also the last bike I ever raced. And when bikes go into storage or when they've finished racing, it sounds like I'm talking about an old racehorse, but there's two ways you can look at this. Some bikes are left as is and people leave the flies on them and leave them how they were last raced and put into storage like that, or people go through them with a fine-tooth comb. As an example, there's some damage to the tank here which could be painted and repaired. So I'm interested to know your guys' thoughts. Do you think that I should take this bike back to the frame, clean it all, paint anything that needs painting, replace anything for new that would make this bike brand new, or do I clean it and leave it as is, untouched and unmolested with the damage and race sort of battle scars on it? Regardless, when this bike finished the season, Michael Rutter then planned on racing it the next year. So it did go back to the frame and was cleaned, ready to be raced the next year. So it was brand new in that respect for another race season. But when you're building a race bike, it's not necessary to paint things like the tank when they're covered with a tank cover because you're never going to see it. The switch gear here has got a little bit of damage on it where I've crashed it. And again, you're never really going to see that. And the cost of replacing all of those bits eats into a race team's budget. So that's why you don't replace things like that. But there's your two options. In the meantime, I'm going to keep taking parts off this bike. So onto the fuel tank. Now it has got fuel in it. There's an R-clip here which comes off and a washer. In my limited experience of bikes, I try to put bolts back into holes where I can. I try to put washers back onto things where they need to stay, and that can stay as one piece so I don't lose anything. Now, the tank's bolted on here, I can see, and there's some pipes, breather pipes at the front that I need to take off. So I'll undo these 2 bolts and see what happens. Right, now this is where it can all go wrong, because I don't know what I'm looking at underneath here or how it disconnects some electronic things. I'm getting a little bit nervous now. So, this is where things start getting a little bit more complicated. You can see how many electronic components there are on this bike, but those 2 there are for the fuel pump. If anyone has watched a Matt Armstrong video where he takes apart supercars with no manual and having never seen them before, and puts them back together and makes them work, I give him my utmost respect, because I have no idea how on earth he even remotely thinks about doing that. I'm going to put this back in here for safety, and it actually fills me with loads of confidence, or false hope probably, that if he can do that, I can maybe attempt some of this. Next thing to remove, I could take the wheels out, because they'll need cleaning, and then that's probably the last of the big bits that I know how to safely remove and put back together. The thing that makes me the most nervous about doing this is if I come to ride it again, because I don't want things to fall off it or things to fail. And the main things I think that I could get really wrong are linkages, wheels not being tight, brakes not being tight, the throttle and electronics not working properly. They're the main things that can go wrong. Everything else, I mean, what else is there actually now I've just mentioned all that? It's not big or clever working on bikes and getting things wrong when you ride them on track, because it's very dangerous, and I've ridden my fair share of bikes where things have gone wrong, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm doing this carefully and bit by bit, but I'll take the wheels out next if I can find the front stand. It's actually bringing back so many memories of riding this bike. One of the funniest ones for me was turning up at Darley-Moor race meeting, which is on the channel somewhere. It was just the most embarrassing experience of my life, because we turned up with 2 brand new 2021 BMW M1000s. This was the first year of the M, where it had these huge wings on it, and wings weren't really a thing back then on superbikes. And I just remember turning up at all these lads and dads racing, which is where I started racing, and it was just ridiculous turning up with 2 50 grand bikes, and everyone expected me to win, and I got beat. I finished second. Anyway, I redeemed myself at the first Superstock race, where we did actually win. The first 2 races, in fact. Now, these brakes are filthy. There's a lot of brake dust. If you can see that there. So that's one job to clean. Luckily, I've got plenty of muck-off cleaner in stock to help me do that. Now, I don't really like brakes hanging like this, because it puts tension on the brake lines up here. For eagle-eyed people, when I said I couldn't find a front stand, that one that was under the bike didn't actually fit. This one does. But it doesn't have any attachments to hang the calipers on. Some teams have attachments built onto the front stand where you can then hang your front caliper, so it doesn't hang and put tension on the brake line like that. But it's just going to have to sit and hang like that, as I don't have any. I'm going to put the bolts for the caliper back in here so I don't lose them. Now I'm just turning this round like this. I'm pretty sure I'm doing it wrong, because, there we go. This is a very fancy front wheel system for taking the front wheel out, and I don't know. I know I'm not doing it right, and there's mechanics laughing at me right now. This is the whole idea.
This looks dangerous.
Right, so I've got excited and started doing the bike build.
Right.
So I've started dismantling things, and I've come to a serious issue.
Go on.
I can't remove the front wheel.
What do you mean you can't remove the front wheel?
I have no idea, right? So I've undone the 2 pinch bolts that side and that side,
Yeah.
right? When I put this in, It just turns.
Oh, you numpty. Right, stop there. Right, the pinch bolts.
Yeah.
Back on the pinch bolts.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
turn it round. Turn the camera round. Right, the ones on the left, I want you to be able to undo them with your fingers.
Right. Okay, they're not finger undoable at all. Right.
Right, and then the ones on the right,
Yeah.
I want you to tighten them back up.
All right.
As tight as, well, not as tight as you can, but tight.
Fuck.
Right, go on to the other side a little bit. You have to do them evenly.
Right. Now undo it.
Now undo that, and it's going to be tight.
Right. Okay. Wait there.
This is dangerous.
Fucking hell! It is tight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, this is what happened.
Spin like it was before. You won't undo it using that. They're like 60 newton meters.
Oh, you're joking, really?
Yeah.
What do I need?
What?
What do I need?
You need a wrench.
All right. Wait there. What, like a socket and a?
Yeah, like a socket. Well, just show me your toolbox. Oh my God. This is. I'm worried.
One of these.
Right, let's have a look. Yeah, put that straight in there.
All right. Oh yeah. Right. Wait there. The beauty of this video is I've literally started with I've got no idea what I'm doing, and this is going to be far more entertaining than Macaulay doing it all properly.
You have to swim because this isn't.
Yeah, it's tight, isn't it?
You with a speed brake.
Well, I said.
Turned it off, you can put the speed brace in.
All right, I think it's just turning around at the moment. It's meant to be this tight.
Try tightening the pinch bolts again, the other side, a bit more tighter.
All right. Here we go. Strap yourself in. Aha! Oh, now we're talking.
This is dangerous.
Oh, good. That was all on camera as well. Perfect, Macaulay. Right.
You're very welcome.
I'll be back in touch very soon. Right, to every mechanic that I've ever worked with that's laughing at me, told you this would happen. Anyway, the wheel can come out now. I knew it was so fancy that something was wrong. So it has this fancy blue part in the end that they undo it with that. I now remember, and then they get the speed brace on it to do it really fast. I just saw a speed brace and thought, I need a speed brace. I told you, I'd said that I'd seen these worked on lots of times and not paid proper attention. So there you go. Right, wheel out. And then that can go back in there. I'll get back wheel out. I've not had my muck-off gloves on and my hands are getting dirty, which is the whole idea of these. So, this is going to be a dirty job. Right, 32mm spanner, because I don't have the right socket. That was a bit easier. God, look at that. It's not like working on a road bike. See how easy that just sits in there. This is where, when you're working on a road bike, all your spacers are now on the floor. And nothing fits. Chain off. Chain off. It's not as easy as it looks. There we go, chain out the way. Wheel out. Recap so far, bodywork is off, tank is off, wheels are now out of it. I'm gonna have a quick tidy up because if I've been taught one thing by mechanics over the years is to keep the workshop tidy as you go. I've got tools out everywhere. So I'll have a quick tidy up and then assess what we're gonna do after that. So next job is to remove the exhaust. I might remove the rear sets so I can clean behind there properly and attempt to take the radiator off. And past that, I think I can actually get to everything pretty well. The engine, as it was prepped before I last rode this bike, does look pretty clean. So I think I'm gonna be able to clean everything pretty well and do exactly what I want to it. So I'll run a little time lapse now, remove these next parts and see after that. Right, spring puller. I hate doing this job because I always feel like I'm going to lose a finger. Oh, that was easy. Oh, and in case you're wondering what this is on the inside of my leg, I was trials riding the other day and my girlfriend said to me, had you better not put some kit on? And I said, no, I'm fine, I know what I'm doing, I'm an expert. 2 seconds later, I leant forward and melted my leg on the exhaust and it then proceeded to get infected because I'm a man and I didn't clean it properly and just ignored it. And now I'm gonna have a cracking scar on my leg. So, spring's disconnected. That is lock wired on, so I need to cut the lock wire. Next job is to remove the rear sets. I always say that I'm not experienced doing this, and I'm not experienced in that I'm never left to my own devices. I've always got people with me doing it. There are a few bike build series on this channel which I always start with good intentions to do all by myself, and then I panic and have to rope other people into doing it. And that's why I want to learn better for myself. So that's why we're here, just getting stuck in. And inevitably, I'm going to break things and get things wrong, but that's all part of the learning process. Now, I mentioned before, I've been given a few freebies for this bike, and one of those is from GB Racing, who not only sponsored me when I raced this bike, they're still a sponsor of this channel and an amazing British company that I work with. So they've very kindly sent me some brand new covers for this bike. So I'm going to replace these covers, and this is an exceptionally easy job that anyone can do. I've done this many times myself before. So I'll remove the covers on this side and the other side, ready to replace them with my new ones later on in the video. Final job is to remove the front mud guard. I realised I didn't take that out. And then potentially remove the radiator. After that, jobs start getting a bit too technical for me. Obviously, you'd have to remove the engine and the airbox and the front forks and the dash. And to be honest, I don't think it's actually necessary. When I initially started this, I thought there was going to be a lot more work to do to it, but it's still really clean and I can access most of that I need to clean there. The rest of it is a lot of work for not really a huge amount of gain. So the big question still is, do I take all the bodywork to get repainted and fit all new parts to the outside of it, or do I leave it as a race bike? I think I'm swaying towards the idea of leaving it as a race bike. Once I've removed this radiator, I'll give you a close-up tour of the whole bike and show you some of the little things that teams do to bikes to make them race bikes. Then once we've done that, I'll clean all the parts. You can see all the parts being cleaned, and then build the bike back up to a pristine, brand new BMW M1000RR. So, removing the radiator, first thing is to get your muck off bucket and get water everywhere. Now, I just need to make sure I'm removing the right pipes and I don't get oil everywhere. But I'm pretty sure it's just that pipe there I need to remove, and we will be laughing. So, here goes nothing. My bucket's too tall. Right, well, I've got water coming out anyway. So while the water's draining out of this, I may as well tell you about the link in the description below where you can access my online training courses on how to go faster on track. Don't worry if there's none on mechanicking, because that is not my strong point. But plenty on riding, because I've got half an idea how to do that. So, most of the water is out. I don't know what I expected there other than to get wet. That may have been a pain in the backside for me, and I didn't really know what I was doing. But I've got it off, and I'm glad I did, because it's what stinks. It's filthy, as you can see. So I can give that a good scrub in a second. And my other bucket, I've just realised that was holding a tiny amount of water, is upside down. And that holds no water in that position, so that is now also on the floor. Now, I've got to the point that I get to with every bike build, which is I'm at this stage where there's parts everywhere and I lose all enthusiasm because it looks like a lot of work. I start the bike build full of enthusiasm, thinking I can take on the world, and then suddenly I get to this bit and it fades. But what I'm going to do now is give you a quick tour of the bike, show you all the parts up close, and then talk through the bits that I'm going to clean. And so far today, despite a few embarrassing moments, nothing has really gone too far wrong, although I haven't put it back together yet, which is normally where the fun starts. So if I start from the top down, I don't know if this is a bad idea, turning the dash on when that's disconnected. Who knows? We'll try it. Ooh. I think it's okay. There's the dash. So on here were my buttons that adjust the engine braking mode, and then if I press that one, that switches it through the dash. So then I could adjust the traction control settings. I think there's 7 up, and then there's also -7 down. And depending on what maps we put in the bike would depend on what traction settings I'd use. That's the first thing. The second thing is my rain light, which used to be, I think it's that yellow one. I don't want to press too much here because things are disconnected. But anyway, on this side, this is the kill switch, the mode button, which changes, at the top there, that will change through the different rain modes. So we would have different maps in each of those that we could use to change the overall feeling of the bike. Here you can see the lap timer, so that would be my lap time, and then temperature at the bottom. Not the outside temperature, because I don't need to know that. So that is the dash, and then this is the on-off, and then here is the USB port where they would download data out of the bike. I don't know what this one does. Shall I flick it? That might actually be the rain light, come to think of it. I think that was the rain light. Over on this side, we have the remote brake adjuster. Now this adjusts the front brake lever. So if I turn that in that direction, it winds the brake lever out in case the brake would fade during the race. So I could adjust the distance it is from my fingers. So I won't do it because the front wheel's not in, but if I pulled that in and it was coming in towards my fingers when the brakes were getting hot, you can adjust it back out with that on that side to push it back away from your fingers. Because for people that don't ride on track or don't know, if that brake lever comes in towards your fingers, you then have no brakes effectively and you can't stop, which is very scary. In case you're wondering what these are just clean grips to keep the grips clean. This is a quick action throttle, which closes very quickly, which is probably more important than opening it in my case a lot of the time. I've just discovered something very special about this bike, and that is that it's been scrutineered for the Isle of Man TT before Michael Rutter was going to race it, but he didn't actually end up racing this bike. This would normally be where the key sits on a normal road bike, but we had these machined to fill that gap. Now, this reservoir here is for this lever here. Now that is my rear thumb brake. Now I'd use the thumb brake when the bike was wheeling too much, or use it going into the corner where it's more difficult to use your foot brake, and I'd always struggle with that, so I would always try to use it. It's got K-Tech suspension that you can see here and here. Now this ECU was actually an illegal one that I'm just kidding. It's a standard BMW ECU. All you Superstock warriors out there claiming I was cheating all the time. Now in here we have the BMW M1000RR engine, which is an absolute beast. I think this had, well, it definitely had over 210 horsepower. It could have been even more than that, depending on the dyno you went on, as a standard road bike engine, which is just ridiculous. In here would normally be your ABS pump, but we removed that because we don't need it in racing and it saves weight, so we get rid of that. Lightweight battery on the back there. Down here, we've got the rear suspension, and I have realised that Michael Rutter has robbed the rear suspension pot off here to log that. So I will be going back in his toolbox to try and find that. Now you can see there, it's labelled up T-Mac. That is because this is my rear suspension unit that I raced with. Now you might notice that this bike has a lot of lock wire on. If you look at this, for example, there's lock wire everywhere. And the reason for that is Michael Rutter would use this bike at the TT, so everything is lock wired to make sure that nothing can come off, as that race completely torches bikes and things can vibrate loose, so anything that they don't want to move, they lock wire shut. This little thing is the GPS remote that sits on the back of the bike that links to the dash and can do things like your GPS position on the track, your lap times, and all sorts of clever things like that. On here we have got a Renthal sprocket, and it's a 42, as you can see here. That's the magic gearing that you just use at every track, or people would like to think in Superstock. I'm actually going to remove this front sprocket cover too, so we can have a look. Now you can't see that, but on the front it says 17 there, so that is 1742 gearing I was running. For any Superstock people wondering if there's a magic gearing ratio that I used at every single track, that was it. I never changed it. That is, of course, me being sarcastic, but in Superstock, people would ask you all the time what gearing you're running because they're convinced if they just change the gearing, they'd be on pole. On the front here, this little red, it looks like a steering damper. Now that is a potentiometer, I believe it's called. And what that does is measure the distance that the forks go up and down when you're riding round. And you use all that information to set up your suspension during the session. And this all links to the dash, so you can see exactly where that's happening on the track. This little thing just is a manual reader for you to see how much fork travel you're using. It's like a quick guide during the session that, without plugging into the bike to seeing exactly what the suspension's doing, the mechanics can see if this is right down at the bottom, then you're using all your suspension travel and you might need to make it stiffer to use less travel. Down here you can see the exhaust lambdas that plug in to this and all links back to the electronics. So you can see quite quickly there's quite a lot of electronic components going on here, and if any of them aren't plugged in properly or not working correctly, then the bike doesn't run properly. So that's why I'm a little bit nervous to go much further when I start unscrewing things, because if I break something then the bike won't run. So I guess the final thing to show you is in here. This is for the fuel tank, and these were the wires that I removed earlier, the fuel pump. Back here there's obviously a lot of wires that are all blanked off, and these are all for the ABS, I believe. I'm just guessing, but that goes back to where the ABS pump sits there. And then up here, I'm not actually sure if anything goes up here on the normal road bike, but I know we did play with at some point, I can tell you now because it doesn't matter because I'm not racing against you, that we bolted plates in here, and that's why these are the threaded, and these plates went up there so we could balance the bike, put more weight up higher if we wanted to, or reduce it. We were basically trying to get more weight over the rear end because we felt like we needed that at the time, and that's what we were doing. And there's all my secrets about this bike. I don't really have any other secrets to tell you. I didn't know where to do the outro for this video, but as it is the Olympic season, I thought this would do. That's the bike stripped down. I'll clean it up in the next episode. Let me know in the comments if you think we should be building this back to a new race bike or back to how I last raced it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. Au revoir.